SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
Surf Excel නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සෝතයි. Tonight, clear signs. Drunken prison shenanigans leads to the resignation of a state minister as Northern MP labels it evidence of a racism epidemic.
Clearly, that act is a communal, downright racist act.
Looking within, the new central bank governor expresses confidence in homegrown economic solutions after assuming office today.
The central bank is the instrument that society has created to provide that leadership to the economy. So that means we got to always be able to think one step ahead, two steps ahead, sometimes three steps ahead.
Changing the game. Top university academics says it's time to move towards a visionary national economic policy that crosses political divides.
The economists don't have the strategy. The strategy is by the strategists. So once you give the economic policy, the strategy must be designed.
Among the few, Sri Lankan novelist shortlisted for the prestigious 2021 Booker Prize for his wartime Jaffna tale. All this and much more coming up on this Wednesday, 15th of September 2021.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වලකයි.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I am Shanella Fernando in your top stories for tonight. Former State Minister Ajit Nivard Cabral assumed duties in a familiar role today as the 16th Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. He is the only official to have been twice appointed to the position. In his inaugural address to the bank staff, the Governor expressed confidence in its officials and insisted that they are better equipped to provide the solutions the country needs. Former State Minister of Money, Capital Markets and State Enterprise Reforms Ajit Nivard Cabral received his letter of appointment from President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today as the 16th Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. The position was vacated by former Governor Professor W.D. Lakshman, who announced a premature retirement last week. The new governor is no stranger to the central bank as he previously held the position for nearly 9 years since 2006. In order to accept the new appointment, he relinquished his parliamentary seat on the 13th of this month, handing his resignation to the General Secretary of Parliament. He then assumed duties at the central bank, becoming the first to hold the position twice.
Policy measures must be taken. There's no shortcut. Sometimes there are tough policy measures to be taken. When you take certain policy measures, it always has repercussions from another side. And sometimes if you don't take those policy measures, you may meander along and there won't be any further changes that we could make that could put the situation right in the longer term. And when those policy measures are introduced as well as implemented, there may be certain challenges that would be also forthcoming. We will have to also take steps to deal with those challenges as well. The central bank is the instrument that society has created to provide that leadership to the economy. That has to be provided by this institution. So that means we got to always be able to think one step ahead, two steps ahead, sometimes three steps ahead.
During an address to bank staff today, Governor Cabral also highlighted the need to bring more discipline into the country's economy.
We've got to take that step in order to ensure that the markets would also be able to read the signs that the central bank is producing so that they would need to use that as the guidance, particularly in turbulent times like what we are having today. We need to bring some discipline to the economy as well so that people will know what needs to be done, why the central bank is doing whatever it is doing.
Further, the governor also expressed confidence in CBSL officials, insisting that local officials have the know-how and unique insights into Sri Lanka's economy to provide the solutions the country needs.
People think that it is only someone from outside who can come and give guidance. Sometimes we are also told, why don't you listen to the IMF? Why don't you get them on board? But I must tell you that I have absolute reliance upon all of you. You have understood the economic models of the world, and we would, as a monetary board, seek your guidance. Believe in the fact that we can put this right. We have seen these challenges. We have been sometimes daunted by these challenges, but I think it's now time for us to understand that these challenges are having to be fixed by us.
Meanwhile, newly appointed Central Bank Governor Ajit Niwad Cabral joined in Divariyamuwatta on our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24 today in his maiden exclusive interview. You can catch the full interview tomorrow at 7 p.m. on AdaDerana 24. Meanwhile, in other news, delivering the anniversary oration of the Central Bank Centre for Banking Studies, founder Vice-Chancellor of the University of Uvavellassa, Dr. Chandra Ambuldeniya says that overcoming the country's economic situation needs to entail embracing a single long-term policy for the country that is agreed upon by all political leaders.
Founder Vice-Chancellor of the Uvavellassa University, Dr. Chandra Ambuldeniya says that the root cause of Sri Lanka's current woes is its very short shelf life of constantly changing government policies. Delivering the anniversary oration of the Central Bank's Centre for Banking Studies, Dr. Ambuldeniya explained that overcoming this would entail embracing a single long-term policy for the country that is agreed upon by all political leaders.
We need some bigger thinking at the high end, and that bigger thinking is something where we want to be in 5 years' time. And if you can envision that thinking, 5 years is a very short-term period of any situation. But now, for example, China is thinking 1,000 years ahead, and that's why they are doing everything with us, with the Belt and Road Initiative and all their relationships building, and they are all the connectivity with all hundreds of countries, and they are building up a huge network so that their future will be very secure and they will be very powerful in the world in time to come. And it's a gradual process of developing. Now, in our country, we don't have anything like that, even for the next 20 years, we don't have, because what this government does will be changed by the next government. That way you can't do. So we need a national policy thinking, a national visionary who will be giving the vision for this country to move forward. And based on that vision, that we must structure the program agreement with everybody who are influential in politics in our country, so that they adopt that. You can't have something that is extreme left and extreme right agreeing on certain things. It should be economic thinking for value addition. Then of course there are two other aspects in this whole thing. For sustainability, it is the social thinking. How can the society benefit with this? The other one is sustaining the environment. I don't want to talk about the environment, but the social benefit is very, very important. So integrate these things so that we don't harm the society, we sustain the society and keep the environment in a good condition, and recovering the values of the environment, giving it back, and then think about the economy. It is economics. There is nothing else. And the strategy after that. The economists don't have the strategy. The strategy is by the strategists. So once you give the economic policy, the strategy must be designed.
Minister of Energy Uday Gammanpilla says that Sri Lanka has enough petroleum resources in Mannar to sort out government debt many times over. Addressing a media briefing to announce the first airborne survey of Sri Lanka to map oil and gas resources at the Mannar Basin, he announced that Sri Lanka is set to earn valuable foreign exchange by selling the data obtained from the survey.
The Ministry of Energy, in collaboration with the UK-based geographical survey company Bell Geospace, recently commenced an airborne full-tensor gradiometry, gravity and magnetic survey to detect petroleum resources in the shallow waters of the Mannar Basin. The survey is said to be the first of its kind conducted in Sri Lanka. An official media briefing was held today to announce the ongoing survey, where Subject Minister Uday Gammanpilla explained that this was being done by the company on a profit share basis with the government.
We had only 20 exploration blocks in our exploration map for a long time. Investors had to spend a lot of money to complete exploration of a block. This had an adverse impact on attraction of investors to oil exploration in Sri Lanka. Therefore, we decided to amalgamate those 20 blocks and redivide into 873 smaller blocks. Bell Geospace of UK, a world-renowned geological surveying company, is collecting this information for us by conducting a gravity and magnetic survey. The beauty of this project is no cost to Sri Lankan government. The entire cost of the survey will be borne by the company. The company has agreed to share its profits with us, earned from selling the collected data to the prospective investors.
We have completed over 60% of this current project. The aircraft and science equipment are operating very well, and the data we have acquired so far is of excellent quality. We are confident that once fully processed, it will provide far better, more detailed subsurface 3D imaging and therefore increased understanding of the entire survey area.
In the meantime, the minister also outlined the estimation of the oil and gas reserves the Mannar Basin may hold, putting it at around $260 billion, enough to pay the country's external debt many times over.
මේ තියෙන්නේ මන්නාරම් ද්‍රෝණියේ ත්‍රිමාන චිත්‍රයක් කොළ පාටින් පෙන්වන්නේ තෙල් නිදි විදියට හඳුනාගත්ත බිම් ප්‍රදේශ රතු පාටින් පෙන්වන්නේ ගෑස් නිදි ලෙස හඳුනාගත්ත බිම් ප්‍රදේශ. එතකොට මේ අඳුරගෙන තියෙනවා අපි දැනට ඒ මන්නාරම් ද්‍රෝණියේ පමණක් බොරතෙල් බැරල් බිලියන 2ක්. අපි ඩොලර් 75යි බැරල් එකක් කියලා ගණන් හැදුවොත් ඒතර ඩොලර් බිලියන 150ක් වටිනවා තෙල් නිදි ටික. ඒතර ගෑස් තියෙනවා ඝන අඩි ට්‍රිලියන 9ක්. එක ඝන අඩියක් 713යි කියලා ගත්තොත් LNG නැත්තම් ස්වාභාවික වායු අපිට තියෙනවා ඩොලර් බිලියන 117ක් වටිනවා. මේ දෙක එකතු කරාම ඩොලර් බිලියන 267යි. ආයෝජකයට 150ක්ම යනවා. 150යි අපිට හම්බෙන්නේ කියලා අපි ගණන් හැදුවම අපිට ඩොලර් බිලියන 133.5ක් මේ තෙල් සහ ගෑස් විකිණීමෙන් ආණ්ඩුවට උපය ගන්න පුළුවන්. ඔබ දන්නවා ආණ්ඩුව සහ ආණ්ඩුවේ සියලුම ආයතන එක්ව ගත්තොත් විදේශ ණය තියෙන්නේ ඩොලර් බිලියන 47යි.
Big 3.
State Minister Lohan Ratwatte has resigned from his portfolio of prison management and prisoners rehabilitation today after claiming responsibility for the recent events that took place in 2 prisons in the past few days. The State Minister was embroiled in allegations that he threatened LTTE detainees at gunpoint. His resignation comes on the heels of a whirlwind of comments, with a number of factions calling for the State Minister to be stripped from his portfolio and charged over the incidents. State Minister of Prison Management and Prisoners Rehabilitation Lohan Ratwatte tendered his letter of resignation today. His stepping down was officially announced by the President's Media Division this afternoon and confirmed that his resignation was accepted by the President. The statement read that the State Minister accepted responsibility for the incidents that took place within the Valikada and Anuradhapura prisons in the last few days. On the 6th of this month, allegations has arisen of the State Minister having entered the Valikada prison along with 3 other individuals. They also alleged that the State Minister had been under the influence of alcohol and had displayed unruly behaviour. However, when media outlets inquired from Prisons Commissioner General Tushara Upuldeniya, he rejected the claims that such an incident had happened. Fast forward to the 12th of this month, it emerged that the State Minister had entered the Anuradhapura prison as well. According to prison sources, the State Minister had proceeded towards the cells of LTTE detainees and made 2 detainees kneel down before him while threatening them at gunpoint. The incidents also caught the attention of UN Resident Coordinator in Sri Lanka, Hana Singh Hamdi, who condemned any ill treatment of prisoners while adding that the state is duty-bound to protect the rights of prisoners. Further commenting on the matter, Ahila Ilange Tamil Congress parliamentarian Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam says that the State Minister's behaviour was a clear indication of the government's approach towards Tamil political prisoners.
The gravity of this incident must be understood in its proper context. The minister concerned is the minister who is supposed to look after the interests of not only the prisons and the administration of prisons, but also prisoners. It is through that ministry, prisoners can have some sort of recourse to benefits and other things that they would want. That you have that very same minister in charge behave in this manner, I think shows how much this government has prisoners and prison affairs, and in particular Tamil political prisoners, in their minds and with what mindset they are functioning.
The parliamentarian labelled the State Minister's behaviour an act of racism, which he said will someday haunt the entire nation.
Clearly that act is a racist act. It is a communal, downright racist act. But the thing with racism is that racism is like a cancer. Initially, it will target a particular group, in this case, obviously Tamils. But like a cancer, even though it's localized initially, it spreads. And in Sri Lanka, that cancer is spreading. It started with the Tamils. It is now targeting the Muslims. And when the cancer spreads in that way, especially racism, the acts that you do in the name of racism, in your thirst for wanting to discriminate and act against another, you get used to those acts. And when you get used to those acts, they become very convenient. And subsequently, you will even apply those very same acts to your own. Anyone who you believe is the other will become a victim of those acts. And that is what is happening in Sri Lanka.
Meanwhile, at today's sessions of the United Nations Human Rights Commission, several non-governmental organizations made presentations to the Commission in relation to Sri Lanka, taken up today by two faith-biased non-governmental organizations, Vivat International and TE International Federation of Catholic Charities, was the lack of progress in the Easter Sunday terror attack investigations.
Vivat International and a coalition of NGOs welcome the High Commissioner's oral update on Sri Lanka and are in solidarity with Sri Lankans seeking justice for the Easter attacks as well as other crimes and human rights violations. The biggest post-war massacre was the Easter attacks on 21st April 2019, which killed nearly 270 persons. While a parliamentary select committee, a Presidential Commission of Inquiry and National Police Investigations and Prosecutions seems focused on officials who are negligent in preventing the attacks and those who had low-key involvement in preparing the attacks, we concur with the former Attorney General who said that there was a grand conspiracy of the Easter attacks, and we join Sri Lankans in demanding that the focus must be on this conspiracy and the mastermind. We urge the High Commissioner to include the Easter attacks in the monitoring and reporting to the Council on its resolution HRC/46/20, as well as collecting, consolidating, analyzing and preserving information and evidence regarding the Easter attacks to advance accountability. We urge the High Commissioner and the Human Rights Council member states to support families of victims and survivors of Easter attacks who are pursuing justice through judicial proceeding in different countries.
On Easter Sunday 2019, 269 people lost their lives and over 500 were injured in Sri Lankan churches and hotels following the blind bomb attack targeting Sri Lankans, Christians, Muslim and Buddhist, and 47 foreign tourists from 14 different countries. We regret that the political leadership, the police and the military authorities failed to comprehend the visible warning signals. The terrorist attack has brought about a climate of fear, insecurity and mistrust in the whole country. An inquiry was conducted and the findings and recommendations were shared with the new government. We regret, however, the lack of substantive progress in the investigations and effective implementation of the recommendations. Echoing the concerns of the local church, it's of primary importance to ensure accountability and secure justice, full truth and reparation to all victims and their families.
Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Pieris requested the Sri Lankan community residing in Italy to come to the rescue of the country in terms of resuscitating its economy. He made note that Finance Ministry has decided to pay an additional sum of ₹2 for every dollar sent by Sri Lankans to their motherland. He made these remarks during a meeting with the Sri Lankan community in Italy yesterday.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, who is on a diplomatic visit to Italy for the G20 Interfaith Forum, met with Italy's Sri Lankan community in Bologna yesterday. At the meeting, the Sri Lankan community requested the Prime Minister to put in place a mechanism through which they can obtain their pensions provided by the government of Italy after 20 years of service, even if they come back home. The Premier then instructed Foreign Minister G.L. Pieris to discuss this issue with the government of Italy. The Minister then moved to make a request from the Sri Lankan community residing there.
ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ මුදල් අමාත්‍යාංශයේ මහා භාණ්ඩාගාරයේ තියෙන එක. ඔතන වඩා බර්ගාවට එන එවන හැම ඩොලරයකම
Deputy Director General of Education and Research at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hemant Herath, said that several cases of black fungus infection, which was found initially in India, have been reported in Sri Lanka. He urged patients with chronic illnesses and those who are immunocompromised to be careful, as the infection can be deadly to them. While neighbouring India was suffering from a massive outbreak of COVID-19 during the month of May, a fungal infection called black fungus or mucormycosis was reported among some COVID-19 infected. Medical experts said that this infection can cause the deaths of patients with chronic illnesses as well as those who are immunocompromised. During the month of May, the Health Ministry assured that Sri Lanka was free from black fungus. However, today the ministry confirmed that a few cases have been reported from the districts of Colombo, Kurunegala and Ratnapura. Ministry officials stressed that despite this, there is no need to panic as it is non-communicable.
It is a treatable condition if the immunity of the person is in a good condition. However, what we need to give or to pass the message to the public is that anyone who is having any other chronic disease, and especially those who are getting drugs which can compromise the immunity of the person, should be very careful about this infection. It is coming from the environment, among places like the decayed organic material is there, like the compost production or working with cow dung or similar decaying organic material, where the spores of this fungus can come into your lungs, and probably the skin, eyes or the mouth or nasal cavity are the common places which can infect, but anywhere in the body can infect it if the immunity is low. If they get any unusual signs and symptoms like the black patches in the skin or severe shortness of breath or similar things, you have to ask for medical opinion, get advice from the doctor. They will decide whether it is black fungus or not.
Meanwhile, shifting attention to the COVID-19 situation, health experts are urging the public to practice care when consuming medications advertised as immunoboosters against COVID-19 without medical advice.
නමුත් අනිසිබිය නිසා තමන්ගේ ජීවිතය ආරක්ෂා කර ගැනීමට කියලා වෛද්‍ය උපදෙස් වලින් පරිබාහිරව ෆාමසි එකක තියෙන යම්කිසි කොවිඩ් වෛරසයට ලබා දිය හැකි ප්‍රතිකාර කියලා තියෙන පැකට් වල තියෙන බේත් මොවුන් පානය කරලා කිසිදු වෛද්‍ය නිර්දේශයකින් තොරව ඒ නිසා ඇති වූ සංකූලතා ඇති වූ පුද්ගලයන් මම හිතන්නේ කොවිඩ් වෛරසය ආසාදන වූ පුද්ගලයන්ට වඩා වැඩි. ඒක නිසා අපි මහ ජනතාවගෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටින්න ඕනේ වෛද්‍ය උපදෙස් වලින් තොරව කිසිදු සංකූලතාවයක් නැති අය අනවශ්‍ය ප්‍රතිකාර ලබා නොගත යුතුයි. මොකද මේක දැන් මේ කොවිඩ් ආසාදනය විකුණගෙන ව්‍යාපාරයක් කරගත්ත කොටසක් ඉන්නවා.
In the meantime, 11,605 COVID-19 patients were discharged from hospitals today upon complete recoveries. That brings the country's total number of recoveries to 427,254. Minister of Health Kehelia Rambukwala says that schools will reopen sooner than expected, with grades 1 to 6 set to open within the next 2 weeks. In the meantime, health experts continue to urge the public above 20 years of age to get vaccinated to control the spread of COVID-19 in the country.
A special meeting with health and education sector officials was worked off today at the Ministry of Health under the patronage of Subject Minister Kehelia Rambukwala. During the meeting, attention was drawn to the reopening of schools with adherence to strict health and safety protocols.
ප්‍රථමයෙන්ම 200ට අඩු දරුවන් සිටින පාසල් 5000ක් තියෙනවා මේ රටේ. ඒට ආරම්භයක් ලබා දෙන්නත් පෙර පාසලේ සිට 5 දක්වා හෝ 6 දක්වා පන්ති ආරම්භ කිරීමත් කළ යුතුයි කියන එකත් ඒ දින වෙන් කිරීම සෞඛ්‍ය අංශත් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරලා ඉතිරි සති දෙක තුන ඇතුළත ආරම්භ කිරීමට තීන්දුව කරලා තියෙනවා.
In the meantime, the Technical Subcommittee on Vaccinations at the Ministry of Health is to convene tomorrow to further discuss vaccinations of school children.
On the 16th of September 2021, the Vaccination Technical Subcommittee is to meet and decide on the vaccination of school children and the vaccination process and the mechanism of action. There have been several entities who have suggested their suggestions to the Ministry of Health, that is the College of Pediatricians, the Government Medical Officers Association, who have come forward with their suggestions. So the September 16 Vaccination Subcommittee will stand on the basis of deciding what is the best course of action which would be taken in order to secure the school children, the future of the country, and the decision will be announced after the technical subcommittee meeting.
Meanwhile, the country's vaccination drive against COVID-19 is now in the process of inoculating everyone over 20 years of age. By last evening, 13,602,365 people had obtained a single dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, while 10,747,236 people were immunized with both doses.
The best vaccine you get, the vaccine you get at the earliest, because by that, you're not only securing yourself, you're securing the society and the future of the country. So please do hold responsibility for that. And I urge each and every individual who falls into any category of age above 20, please get yourself vaccinated. You vaccinate yourself. You will save not only your life, you save the life of the country.
Sri Lankan novelist Anuk Arudprakasam's Passage North has been shortlisted for the Booker Prize 2021. The shortlist for the prestigious literary prize awarded each year for the best novel written in English and published in the UK or Ireland was announced yesterday. Arudprasam, born in Colombo, is an award-winning author who bagged the DSC Prize for South Asian Literature and Shakti Bhatt Prize for his debut novel, The Story of a Brief Marriage. Published in 2016, this novel also made the shortlist for the Dylan Thomas Prize and the German International Literature Prize. The 33-year-old's second novel, A Passage North, explores the lasting effects of the trauma and violence of the island's civil war and a past love affair. Welcome back in your business news. Lanka Ratings Agency CEO Adrian Pereira says that given the many changes brought about by the pandemic, it's time for economies to learn to shed traditional thinking in pursuit of survival and success. Following the release of the agency's economic overview of Sri Lanka, Pereira says that he expects a reserve balance of up to $3 billion by the end of the year.
Domestic ratings agency Lanka Ratings Agency released its economic overview of the country, where the company's CEO Adrian Pereira says that the company's conservative estimates of reserves by the end of this year is around $3 billion.
We view Sri Lanka's reserves on a very conservative basis to be around 3 billion by end of this year. Everything is not so bad as predicted, but of course we'll have to go through some pain, because if you look at the economic outlook report, the issue started actually somewhere in 2016, and the rating downgrades also started, international rating downgrades also started in 2016. So since then it has been going down, but unfortunately COVID pandemic accelerated the whole process of downgrades and economic woes. Governments have to give some concessions, some form of assistance to the people. That's a big picture. So with that, we expect definitely certain things, ratios will go out of hand, budget deficits will get out of hand. So cannot help it. But certain restrictions, import restrictions are mandatory if we have to achieve this. However, if you look at our report, we can see to go there, we need to address certain things. One thing, our debt to GDP ratio needs to be addressed very fast, especially the external debt part. The other one is our export to GDP ratio, which has been on a decline. If we look at our report, we can see that our export to GDP ratio has gone down from 20 to 12% over a period of time, which is not a good sign. And we have been constantly on a current account deficit, which is also not a good sign. We need to address those issues and then take the country forward. As a country, we need to look at things in a different perspective. Definitely, the old economic models may not work in a pandemic like that.
Pereira added that given the many changes brought about by the pandemic, it's critically important that economies learn to shed traditional thinking if they want to survive.
And there will be intermittent restrictions on air travel and closure. So this is a normal thing with a pandemic. With that scenario, as a country, we need to address all the other factors also, like the internal factors, the external factors. Export sector has been growing even during the pandemic section. But there are certain factors that have come into place, like the disruption of the logistics and transport and the supply chain.
The All Share Price Index gained 238.61 points to end at 8,931.21, while the S&P SL 20 index of more liquid stocks ended at 3,332.26, following a gain of 75.94 points. Market turnover was 5.4 billion rupees. Meanwhile, the rupee remained unchanged at 202 rupees and 99 cents against the US dollar. Now let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good night.